So what's the volume for Earth? 4/3 pi r cubed. But what's the volume? Excuse me, radius in terms of r of the moon? Yes. No. 1/4. It's 1/4. If you're saying, look, it says r right there. So what's this? What's that one right there?
Oh wait, are you doing the Earth thing?
We just did the Earth. We just said it right there.
Oh, okay.
We don't know what it is, so you keep it in r. So if that one's r, what's the radius of the moon? 1/4 what? R. If the radius of the Earth is r, which it says right there, what's the radius of the moon going to be? 1/4 r. So what do you plug in? 4/3 pi times 1/4 r to the what power? R to the third power. This is what they want you to simplify right here. They want you to simplify this right here. First of all, what cancels? What's the immediate thing that cancels? 4/3 cancels, yeah, thank you. 4/3 cancels. What else cancels? So don't try to do it all at once. Let's just clean up a little bit. You have r cubed over 1/4 r cubed. Is that r in the denominator? This r down here, is that r next to the 4 or the 1? Is it next to the 4 or the 1? Do you put this r down there or do you put it up there? Up. So what does this simplify to? It simplifies to r over 4 cubed. We need to simplify this. Let's simplify. So how do you simplify that? What should I do now? Yes, Katrina. Distribute the exponents. Right, so r in the denominator. So you end up with this over r cubed over 4 to the... Now what do I do? Someone tell me clearly. What should I do next? Peter. You can't multiply by 4. You only can multiply by a form of 1, but you're on the right track. What do I do with this? I don't like fractions of fractions. Fractions of fractions are not most simplified. What do I do? Yeah. Well, you can do 4 to the third, but I don't multiply it out yet. I want to get rid of that compound fraction. Yes. You do the reciprocal. What do you mean by do the reciprocal? So dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its. So this is equal to r cubed times what? 4 to the 3 over r cubed. So what does that equal? 4 cubed r cubed over r cubed. What can? R cubed cancels, and what does this equal? No, not 4/3. 4 to the third. That's 4 times 4 times 4, which equals 64. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you about the volume of the Earth compared to the volume of the moon? Yeah.
64 moons to 1 Earth.
There's 64 moons to 1 Earth. That's what it tells you. What canceled out completely? What's not in our final answer? Yeah, but what else canceled? There's no what in there? There's no r in there. Look, what happened here? The r is totally gone. This says that if you have a sphere that's 1/4 the radius of another sphere, so if I had a sphere that had a radius of an inch and a sphere that had a radius of 4 inches, what's the ratio of the big volume to the little volume? 64. It's always 64. So if I had a planet that had a mile radius, and a 4-mile radius, what's always going to be the ratio of the big planet's volume to the smaller planet's volume? It's always going to be 64. Did we need to know what r was? Do we think it's exactly 64? It's probably not exactly 64, because the radius, it's pretty close. You could look it up. I'm sure you could look up what is the radius of the Earth and what is the radius of the Moon. Yes, go ahead.
Right, I did it out. It was like
283 times 1.2 to the what? To the what? T equals 0 represents 1984. So what is 1988? 5, 6, 7, 8. 4. Good. What's the salary in 1994 going to be? 283, 1.2 to the what? You sure? Okay. To the 10. So the ratio of the 1988 to a salary in 1994. What ratio am I trying to do? What fraction am I setting up? Find the ratio of an average salary in 1988. So what is it in 1988? 283 times 1.2 to the all over what? 283. So this is 1990. This is 1988 salary to the 1994 salary. That's the ratio, right? Times what? To the 10th. Do we have to use our calculator yet? Can't. No, you're right. Can we simplify this a little bit before we use our calculator? Yeah, greatly. What cancels? The 1.2 does not cancel. You have the same base, so this is division of exponents. So what do you do with the powers? So it's going to be 1.2 to the what? And how do you write that without a negative exponent? Over. So now, if you want to get a decimal answer, do you really need to use your calculator for this? Given enough time, do you know how to figure out what the exact answer is? Yeah, you'd have to do 1.2 times 1.2 times 1.2 times 1.2 times 1.2 times 1.2. Is that annoying? We have these magical things called calculators. So what do you do here? So what does this turn into? 1 over, anybody have the decimal to 3 decimal places? What is it, Pico? 2.98. 2.986. So what does that essentially tell you? Can someone tell me a sentence now? You have this ratio. What does this ratio tell you? Someone say it in a sentence. Pico, go.
The salary in the year 1988.
The average salary
In the year 1994
is
2.986
times bigger than
the salary in
the average salary. Yep. Average salary in
the year
1988. So if you round it a little bit, what is this pretty close to? It's pretty close to 3. So basically, it's telling you that players in 1994 are earning 3 times as much. What they wanted you to do on this question was cancel, simplify a little bit, and then use your calculator. It would have been neat if it simplified a little bit nicer, but you need to use your calculator a little bit on this one. Yes, in the back? What do we do with that negative 2? You distribute it with the other exponents, other powers, right? Are you distributing the negative 2 to the 2? No, you're distributing it to the invisible power, which is 1 and 1. So you have 2 to the x to the y to the all over, x to the first, y to the... Now we can think about this. You can move them around, but you can also think about it this way. What did I say you do with x when you have the common base? What do you do with the exponents? You subtract them. So we could flatten this and then undo it. Or you can move it. I like the moving idea. So what does this become? So I'll leave this 2. We can put it down below. That's fine. What does it become? What's left on the top when you move everything out? You're just left with 1 on top. There's always an invisible 1 sitting there, right? 1 times anything is itself. So what goes to the bottom? 2 squared, x to the first, y to the 6, y to the first. I like that. That's great. We moved it and changed it to negative. That's okay. But now what do we have to simplify? Add the exponents for the things with common base. Also, what's 2 to the second power? 4, x to the y to the... So now we have these 2 things. We'll bring this one down. And they're multiplied together. So what's left on top? 5y to the third over 4 times x to the y to the... There you go. You're all done. That's perfect. That's great. That's really good. Yay! Woo! Because they have the same bases. You subtract, so it becomes 5 over 4x to the 11 over what? Times y to the... Well, it would be y to the negative 4th if it was on top. So if we kept it on top, it'd be 3 minus 7, right? You can just cancel it. Y, cancel, so it's y to the... If you keep it in the bottom. If it was on top, it'd be y to the negative 4. So now are we done? Good catch. That was a very good catch. Yay! Clap for everybody. Woo. She simplified them separately. Here we go. So what did she do? She carried the 8 down. That's important. She got this one wrong before because she just forgot the 8. So there's this 8, and that trails down to be right there. So 1 over 2 to the negative 3. What did she do with the exponent first? She distributed the exponent to the other power, so it's 1 to the negative 3. What is 1 to the negative 3? What's 1 to any power? 1. It's 1. So what did she do? She had 1 to the negative 3 and 2 to the negative 3, so she flipped it over, but what happens to the powers? They become positive. What's 2 to the third? 8. 8 over 1 is just, so it's 8 right there. But then over on the other side, she has 1 over 2 to the negative 5th. 1 over 2 to the negative 5th. She brought it to the top. But when you bring it to the top, it becomes a positive exponent. Also, 1 over 2 to the 5th. Some of you are writing this on. That's 1 times what? 2 to the 5th over 1, which is... And what is 2 to the 5th, Molly? 32. So 32 is right there. So you had 8 times 8 times 32, which is 2,048. Go to lunch.